Women are often expected to do everything. Men are often expected to be everything. And that pressure is crushing more men than we are willing to admit. If you are a woman, stay with me for a minute. Because this conversation is for the men in your life. Your father, your husband, your brother, your son, even your friends. Keep on naming them. And if you are a man watching this, I want you to know that today I am a sister from another mother, and I've got your back. Because we are about to talk about something that almost nobody talks about. The male mental load. And yes, it's real. Not because men have it harder than women, not because we are comparing struggles, okay? But because there is a burden many men have been carrying for so long that we've stopped seeing it. A burden that gets passed down from generation to generation. And an invisible pressure that starts long before a boy becomes a man. The pressure to become somebody, to make something of yourself, to prove your worth, to achieve, to provide, to succeed, to keep going no matter how exhausted you are, to carry the weight without letting anyone see that it's heavy. And here's the thing. Most men didn't choose this pressure. They inherited it. They inherited it from the belief that their value is tied to what they accomplish. That respect must be earned, that love must be earned, that worth must be earned. And so they spend years, sometimes decades, chasing a finish line that keeps moving. More success, more money, more status, more achievement, always more. Never enough. And can we talk about what that does to a human being? What happens when a person feels they have to earn their right to be valued every single day of their life? What happens when a little boy learns that people celebrate him most when he performs, when he wins, when he achieves, when he produces, when he's useful? What happens is that little boy grows into a man who believes he cannot afford to fail. Because failure doesn't just feel like failure. It feels like losing his worth. It feels like losing his identity. It feels like losing the very thing that makes him matter. So he keeps going. Even when he's tired, even when he is overwhelmed, when he's carrying stress that nobody knows about. He keeps going because that's what he was taught a man does. He solves the problem. He carries the burden. He handles it quietly. Very quietly. And that's where the male mental load becomes so heavy. Because it's not just the pressure of responsibilities. It's the pressure of identity. The constant mental calculation. Have you ever thought about that? Because they keep on asking, am I doing enough? Am I earning enough? Am I respected enough? Am I successful enough? Am I falling behind? Am I enough? And for many men, those questions never fully switch off. Not at work, not at home, not on vacation, not even in their sleep. Because when your worth becomes attached to performance, resting starts to feel dangerous. Slowing down starts to feel dangerous. And above all, being vulnerable starts to feel dangerous. And the sad part is that asking for help feels almost impossible. Because somewhere along the way, many men were taught that strength means carrying everything alone. But carrying everything alone is not strength. It's simply survival. And survival is exhausting. And a lot of men are not afraid of hard work. Let me just make that clear. They are afraid that if they stop producing, people will stop valuing them. Let me say that again. They are afraid that when they stop producing, people stop valuing them. Because that is the part nobody wants to talk about. Many men have been conditioned to believe that their value is directly connected to what they provide, what they earn. We can go on. What they build, what they achieve, what they can do for other people. And if that's where your value comes from, then life becomes a never-ending performance. Because the moment you stop performing, a terrifying question appears. Who am I without all of this? Who am I if I lose the job? Who am I if the business fails? Who am I if I can't provide the way I used to? Who am I if I'm no longer the strong one? Who am I if I need help? For many men, those aren't just uncomfortable questions. They are identity questions. And carrying those questions year after year creates a mental load that is rarely acknowledged. Because society often notices what men do, but not always what men carry. We celebrate the success. Okay? We admire the achievement. We applaud the result. But we don't often stop to ask what it cost them emotionally to get there. The sleepless nights, the constant pressure, the fear of failure, the fear of disappointing people they love, the fear of not measuring up, the fear of being seen as weak. And perhaps the deepest fear of all, the fear of becoming irrelevant. Because when a man's worth has been tied to performance for most of his life, irrelevance can feel like emotional death. So he keeps pushing because he has no other way. He keeps striving, carrying, sacrificing, keeps pretending he's okay, even when he's drowning. And this is where I want every woman listening to lean in. Because sometimes the strongest man in your life is carrying the heaviest burden. The man who says, I'm fine. The man who never complains. The man who always shows up. The man who always takes care of everyone else. The man who never asks for anything. That man may be carrying pressures he doesn't even know how to put into words. Not because he's hiding them from you. Let me be clear on that. But because nobody ever taught him that he was allowed to have them, he was never taught that he could be loved for who he is, not just for what he does. Nobody ever taught him that his value existed before the success, before the salary, before the status, before the achievement, before the titles. And I strongly believe that that's the healing conversation we need to start having. Not just with men, but about men. Because a healthy society doesn't only care about people when they are producing. It cares about people because they are human. And every man watching this needs to hear something that should have been said a long time ago. You do not have to earn your worth. You do not have to perform your way into being lovable. You do not have to carry every burden alone. You do not have to be everything for everyone. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to struggle. You are allowed to be human. And the people who truly love you will not stop loving you when you stop performing. I promise you that. Because your value was never supposed to come from what you produce. Your value simply comes from who you are. And maybe it's time the world remembered that. And maybe it's time you remembered it too.